Good evening. My name is Reverend Patryse Brown. I am going to speak to you about the resurrection of Christ and how it should affect Christian preparedness or Christian spirituality. I'm also going to discuss how the resurrection of Christ is applied to everyday Christian life. I will begin with a summary and how the resurrection integrates with the Christian spirituality. The resurrection of Christ should compel Christians to reconsider how Jesus' resurrection is not merely a miracle of which to be in awe. The purpose of Christ's resurrection is not merely to build within Christians the hope of an escape from earth and a better time in heaven. Along with conquering death and providing a means for salvation, the resurrection of Christ is a great miracle that forewarns Christians of the death and resurrection that Christians themselves must bear. The resurrection of Christ is a sign to mankind that at the end of the age, like Christ, Christians will be persecuted, will die for the message of the gospel, and Christians will be raised up, that is, resurrected, shortly following their persecution. Similar to Jesus, who preached for 3 years, was killed, and was resurrected on the third day. Jews and Christians will preach the gospel for 3½ years, and then be resurrected after 3½ days. These are the key scriptural references. This understanding is based upon Revelation chapter 11, verses 11 through 13, and Revelation chapter 11, verse 4. There are many questions about who are the two witnesses. Some believe the two witnesses are Elijah and Moses. Some believe they are John the Baptist and Elijah. However, in Revelation 11:4, God's use of the terms the two olive trees and the two lampstands may point to the two witnesses as being two groups of people rather than being two individuals. The Jews and the Christians would be the two groups. In Revelation chapter 11, verses 11 through 13, after witnessing for 1,260 days, the two witnesses are killed after they complete their witness, and they lie dead in the streets. After 3½ days, God calls out to them, saying this, "Come up here." This is a resurrection of Christians and Jews, a resurrection of believers that is to come in the latter days. Revelation 11, verses 11 through 13 states this, "Now after the 3½ days, the breath of life from God entered them, and they stood on their feet, and great fear fell on those who saw them. And they heard a loud voice from heaven saying to them, 'Come up here.' And they ascended to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies saw them. In the same hour there was a great earthquake, and 1/10 of the city fell. In the earthquake 7,000 people were killed, and the rest were afraid and gave glory to the God of heaven. please note this. The resurrection of these Christians from around the world at the end of the age may also be the equivalent of the rapture. The rapture that everyone is searching for within the scriptures may be this resurrection event, when Christians across the world are resurrected up after their witness. This understanding of the resurrection should compel Christians to reconsider how Jesus' resurrection is not merely a great miracle of which to be in awe. Christians are not called to be on the sidelines in awe of the resurrection of Christ. Rather, the miraculous resurrection of Christ forewarns Christians of the death and resurrections that Christians themselves must bear. Whether or not the two witnesses represent two groups of people, the two witnesses are still a representation of the persecution, death, and resurrection that Jesus himself endured, and what the Christians at the end of the age will endure. The practical application for everyday Christian life and ministry is this. If Christians are going to rise again, Christians must have the correct understanding of their role in the resurrection. Christians are not mere bystanders to the resurrection. Some Christians believe we are living in the end of the age. For those Christians who will be alive and participating at the end of the age, those Christians must be prepared for this miraculous event within their own lives. It is imperative that Christians understand the event of the resurrection of Christ. The Christian understanding and belief in the event of Christ's resurrection, or their lack of understanding and lack of belief, will directly impact whether or not Christians will be prepared for their own resurrections. In conclusion, in Matthew 20, verses 22 through 23, Jesus asked the mother of Zebedee's sons this question: are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink, and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with? Jesus continued, you will indeed drink my cup and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with. Christians must understand the resurrection so that they will prepare and be spiritually equipped to drink from this cup of which they are called to drink. My name is Reverend Patryse Brown.